to that sweet Georgia ground. Hillside, you want to die by sweet Georgia. You just
Trouble and fall. If the mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains, should tumble into Goose Creek. Country boy.
Upperville incorporated in 1852, with the General Assembly disbanding the corporation in 1918 because no one wanted to take on the responsibilities of running the town. Just 4 years before, General James A. Buchanan, a newcomer, had financed the building of a town hall.
Brigadier General James A. Buchanan was my great-great-grandfather. I don't know what compelled him, although I do know he was very civic-minded, to do this, have this community center, which I think he got together with the Delaney's and had the people who, when they finished Ayrshire, they built Buchanan Hall.
Well, there was a time when there was nothing the least bit fancy about Buchanan Hall. And the dust did get rising a little bit sometimes if the dancing was heavy. But you hear people talking like it got waist deep. It didn't really rise that high.
Oh, they went late.
Yeah, those parties would go till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah, but you really knew everyone there. It's even the ones where you paid your nominal little fee to get in. It was one big family.
You remember?
I just remember going to the parties down there and having a good time.
When did you start?
When I was dating you.
All right.
We started having these wonderful Halloween parties there, and everyone would come and scream and holler and wear costumes, and that was a lot of fun.
I can't remember too much about Buchanan Hall per se, because it wasn't a place that we could go or that we frequented, so we had no reason to go there. So when I said to my sister that we were going to do this about Buchanan Hall, she said, "Oh, don't you remember how Grandma used to make all that food for Buchanan Hall?"
Buchanan Hall, yes, they did have parties there. But of course, as you know, during that time, there was segregation. Right. And the only time we got in there, or I got to work when I got older, was when I was working there. I had to go down, I'd park cars and do things like that for them, yeah.
Buchanan Hall, about 5 or 6 times a year, they'd have a party at Buchanan Hall, and it wouldn't be too expensive. And Chauncey Brown was usually the music, and so all the young people as well as old people, they're old, young, and little ones, they all came to Buchanan Hall.
But Chauncey was the key to Buchanan Hall for many, many years.
And Chauncey actually used to play a lot of events for us. In those days, horse show circuits were big, much bigger than the thoroughbred industry in Middleburg, Upperville is today, and that was quite the society. In fact, they called his music the Society Swirl.
He played the guitar. And I remember the man that played the piano, he had just a ramrod straight back, and he could just play anything. And Chauncey wouldn't even tell him what he was going to play. He'd just start singing, and the piano player would join in.
There was never any problem with Chauncey, so he knew he was going to show up on time, and people enjoyed his music. And when he left, he cleaned up after himself. He was almost a partner in the operation, I think.
But Chauncey, his big break really was with Duke Ellington. Duke grew up in Washington. He was a sign painter, had a sign painting shop over on T Street in Washington. And Chauncey was a drummer originally, and Chauncey learned to play the guitar from Duke. Duke played the guitar, but he was famous, of course, for playing the piano. But in the early areas, Duke played in this area a lot, and I remember seeing him occasionally at Buchanan Hall.
You know, when I was a teenager, and there were the parties hadn't become particularly wild at that point, but they were great parties.
And those were the days before the 1968 Gun Control Act, and everybody could carry a gun, and most everybody did. And so I'm sure there were some bullet holes around there, but there was certainly the noises of firearms around there.
I mean, we went down there at night and the lights were dim and...
Oh, it was grungy.
It was grungy. I mean...
I remember that Buchanan Hall became seedier and seedier. A guy from Nacogdoches, Texas told me one time that he thought tuxedos, this is back in the 50s when people would wear them to formal dances, ought to be built out of canvas because you were always puking on them.
And I remember when every Sunday morning when we go to church, we'd have to clear the beer bottles away from Buchanan Hall from the night before.
And so that was sort of what happened to Buchanan Hall. It was a kind of a place where people would party, but as the place got seedier, people treated it roughly. And of course, it was used for things like, you know, firemen would have a breakfast over there to raise money for the volunteer fire department. But it was basically sitting over there, used occasionally, but not used very much.
We rented out Buchanan Hall to give this Christmas party. And that was nice because we could turn it and make it real dark and put all the Christmas lights and make it look like it was a good place to come. But it was so cold. It was just unbelievable because of how cold it was in there. You know, we had to put stuff in chinks and all that kind of stuff to keep the air out. So that was my first social contact with it. And that would have been in the early 90s.
You know, the trustees for many, many years were Gordon Staples, Mary Holtzinger, and Doc Williams. And they got to the point where, as any building will, when you don't put any money back into it, it deteriorated to the point where they could no longer rent it. The heat didn't work. It was a mess.
So then Gordon Staples called a meeting of the community to find out what could be done about Buchanan Hall. And I had suggested in the meeting that we sell it to Tony Horkin, who was running a Taekwondo thing and I felt was about as close as Upperville could come at that point to being a community center and resource. You'd have thought I'd suggested that we burn it down and invite the Ku Klux Klan in for a picnic or something. The hue and cry and the uproar and the outrage and so on. And it was great. I mean, it was just a matter of timing, I think, because everybody was suddenly got together and decided we're going to do it. We're going to save Buchanan Hall and renovate it and make it a going effort again.
It was unusable. The kitchen had a beautiful old 1910, 20s gas stove that no one dared go near because they were afraid it would blow up. Plumbing leaked, pipes burst in the winter. Once we started doing the renovation, it had termites in the back corner of the building. It had pretty extensive termite damage, so we had to treat everything and remove a bunch of the original wood studs. And I guess the biggest surprise was it had vinyl asbestos tile floors everywhere, which we knew we had to remove because of the asbestos in the tile. So we did that, and underneath, I had assumed it would just be plywood or something underneath. It was beautiful hardwood floor underneath. We had a number of major donations and a lot of small donations, and that was for me the most gratifying part of it, was the community effort that went into it.
In 2002, I actually gave a fundraiser. A friend of mine and a sorority sister has this boys choir, and I invited her to come to Buchanan Hall and put on a recital for my fundraiser for getting money for Buchanan Hall.
Renovation of the hall began in 2003 and was completed in 2006. It included extensive renovation of the interior and exterior, and most recently we installed a new landscape and had lighting installed for the stage. The first people to use the hall once it was completed were our closest neighbors, Norman and Evelyn Brooks, who used the hall to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary.
Everything was beautiful. You know, they wanted everything on the interior to be completed, and so we just went in there and threw our flowers and things around and decorated it real pretty. And it was beautiful.
One of our treasures treasures here at Buchanan Hall is this 1925 Chickering grand piano on loan to us from a local family. It can be used for weddings and concerts here at the Hall. Most recently, it was used by world-renowned classical pianist John O'Connor, along with the Royal Irish Academy of Music. On the stage was a 45-piece orchestra. It was a wonderful evening and a great event for the community.
It's literally the nicest piano I've ever played on the mountain. It's really cool. What's in the spring, one sunny day, my sweetheart left me, she ran away. But now she's gone, and I don't worry. Lord, I'm sitting on top of the world. She called Dallas and El Paso, said, come on, Daddy, I need you so. But now she's gone, and I don't worry. Lord, I'm sitting on top of the world.
It's a landmark, no doubt about it. It's a major landmark, not just in Upperville, but certainly within a couple 100-mile radius. Everybody knew it in those days.
You got me something about people I knew and liked, and so I enjoy that.
All right, well, thank you.
So you don't owe me anything.
Bells and roll, here I go, singing on bye, bye, blackbird. There is somebody waits on me, sugar sweet, so is she. Bye, bye, blackbird. No one here can love and understand it. Oh, what a love stories they on there and me. I'm going to make my bed and light that old light. I'll be home late tonight.